What's up, my beautiful people? Exile451 here with another daily dose of Reddit Hope and Happy. And today, we're going back into r/AskReddit for some funny pranks that I know are gonna get you laughing. So, let's get to it. Okay, so the AskReddit question was, what's the best prank you've ever heard of, /seen, /experienced? And I know we visited this one before, but there's still so many funny ones in here. A friend of a friend told me this. At first I didn't believe her, but then she grasped my arm and swore that it was true. She was a medical student at the time, and this meant that she and her friends had access cards to the hospital morgues. And after a night at the bar, they decided to head down there and prank a guy called Phil. They found an empty morgue shelf and she got on it. They were going to cover her with a blanket, go get Phil, who worked upstairs, and bring him down to look at corpses, where she would leap out at him. So they shut her in the morgue shelf with a sheet over her, and she listened to them leave, drunken and chuckling. At first, she was really enthusiastic. After 10 minutes, less so. And after half an hour, truly terrified. She said there were 4 things she learned about those shelves. First, there's no way to open them from the inside. Secondly, they're really, really cold. Thirdly, there's no air. Why would there be? And fourthly, there are no walls to the shelves. There's no need for privacy. As she tore off her sheet and was breathing heavily, she could see rows and rows of corpses above, below, and around her. No one came for her. She was breathing heavily and was terrified when suddenly she feels an icy hand grip her arm and the body below start to scream and throttle her. Terrified, she howls and struggles. But it holds her to the shelf and climbs up slowly so she can see its face. It's Phil. See, I'm kind of torn on that because while it's funny, at the same time, this is the sort of thing you end up in therapy over. But, on the other hand, they did kind of set themselves up for it. I mean... I was once at a small, sit-down ice cream shop in Ohio with about 15 guys. We were laughing, making a ton of noise, and generally being annoying to the waitress. To make things worse, only one person out of all 15 of us actually bought something. A single milkshake. We naturally decided it was time to prank our slightly exasperated waitress. Someone suggested we give her the biggest tip of her life. After a bunch of laughing, everyone put in a couple bucks. Then one guy put in a 20, and it was game on. All the dudes started trying to one-up one another by putting in more money for this lady's laughably large tip. We ended up giving her about $170 for a $5 milkshake. When she saw it, she started crying and shaking and couldn't understand what was happening. We thanked her for her excellent service and went on our way. Edit, I want to say that I don't think any of us were at all rich. I was a high school kid with no job and couldn't really afford a milkshake myself. I think I gave less than $5, but I gave her all the cash I had. You don't have to be rich to be kind. And to the people who think this isn't a prank, well, this is better. I mean, I'd call it on the border of being a prank, but still, that's surprisingly wholesome. I mean, you could have gone an entirely different direction with that. Thanks for just being a decent human being. I told my brother dinner was ready. Dinner was not ready. Dude. Don't do that. Oh, that's just mean. Follow up on that one though, that's even worse. My dear old mom used to do this to me all the time. Better kill yourself or save or whatever you do and come eat. Dinner's ready. And then I wait for 20 minutes when she makes the final quick preparations to the meal. Dang it, woman, I don't care if you have to toss the salad. I don't even eat the salad. Let me eat the food promised me. Oh, I can relate. My parents went ziplining with their friends once. This particular zipline has 4 parallel lines, so all 4 of them were hooked up at once, and there was one lever that released them all. Once they were all hooked up, the attendant said, "Now, do you want a countdown or do you want it to be a surprise?" And then pulled the release lever before they could answer. Oh my gosh, my wife would hate that. We went to Puerto Vallarta for our first anniversary because we'd always planned to do a smaller honeymoon, a bigger anniversary. And it was a sheer testament to her love for me that I got her to go on the jungle zipline adventure, because she hates heights. Now, granted, she loved it. She had a blast on the whole thing. And if you ever find yourself in Puerto Vallarta, I highly, highly recommend doing it, because it is just beautiful. That having been said, though, yeah, she was freaking out. And the guides had to give her a countdown and whatnot because she was just so shaky about heights. She does not do heights well. And of course, then you got me who, I'm just loving the whole thing because I'm an adrenaline junkie. I mean, on the last zip line, you can go upside down. And of course, I'm just hanging there like, just look at the canopy. And she's just got her eyes focused on the landing platform on the other end. Oh, I can't wait to go back. Next year we're going back, and I am so excited. Assuming Corona doesn't just blow everything up. The week-long summer camp I attended in Boy Scouts had a special 2-day program for campers who were there for the first time. We all went camping together in a group, away from our own troops. We were gathered around the campfire, and the older scouts in charge of us, of course, told us a ghost story to creep everyone out. As the story went, across the street from where we were camping was an old, haunted Native American burial ground. 300 years ago, there had been a massacre. Scottish traders had murdered an entire tribe, save for one young girl who had escaped and climbed a tree to hide. The tree was said to be sacred, and we were told that it was the only safe place to be if ghosts ever appeared. Something that was claimed had happened, but no one ever witnessed. Of course, we all knew it was just a story to scare us, and most kids were joking and laughing about it. A few minutes later, a car came down the road and stopped next to our campsite. A well-known leader of the camp got out and talked to us for a minute, saying he and some friends were going into town for the night to look for women. He then got all serious for a minute and asked the older scouts if they'd told us the story. He looked at everyone and with a creepy voice told us to take it seriously and remember the sacred tree because strange things have been happening here for the past few weeks. We all just laughed and he got in the car and left. Maybe an hour later, we hear a drumming sound coming from the middle of the burial grounds across the road. It was quiet at first, but got steadily louder. Then suddenly a campfire appeared, and in the light from it, we could see several Indians in full dress dancing in a circle and chanting. The scouts in charge told us to run to the tree, so we all trotted over and stood there with one hand on it watching the dancing, and then as quickly as it appeared, their fire went out and it got quiet. We all stood there for a minute or two and then slowly made our way back to the campfire. A few kids were scared, but most were skeptical. It wouldn't be very hard to stage something like that, and Boy Scouts typically have Indian headdresses and drums and stuff like that for their ceremonies. There was a slight uneasiness in the group though, and then 20 minutes later, the drumming started back up, only this time it was much closer. Maybe 30 feet away. We all got up and started trotting back towards the tree when Indians started appearing out of the woods in several places. Some kids were getting scared now, and then a trader in colonial period costume suddenly appeared from behind the tree and fired a musket at the Indians. Everyone hit the ground and one of the older scouts screamed, "Get up! Get to the tree!" And we all ran as fast as we could. There was an old Indian woman sitting on the ground with her back to the tree, staring straight ahead. Kids screamed at her, but she just sat there motionless. More Indians appeared out of the woods and more colonial traders showed up, firing their muskets in all directions. Kids were freaking out. The Indians had all started dancing and chanting around our campfire, and every few seconds it would suddenly flare up and die back. They were throwing handfuls of black powder into it, we found out later. A group of them came to our tree and danced and chanted in a circle around us. 2 kids let go of the tree and were grabbed and hauled away screaming. This went on for a minute or two, and then the mayhem started to calm down. The chief walked towards us and said, "Campfire, gentlemen," but nobody moved. One of the older scouts said, "I think we better listen to him," and everyone slowly moved towards our fire and sat around it while Indians danced and chanted in a circle behind us. The chief stepped forward and said, "Move back from the fire." Nobody moved. "Move back from the fire," and threw a handful of black powder into it to cause it to flare up. Everyone scrambled back 5 feet. Then the chief stepped forward, took off his headdress, and turned on a flashlight. It was the scout leader who'd stopped by earlier on his way into town. One by one, the participants all stepped forward and showed their identities. Some were older kids from our different troops. Others were leaders and workers at the camp. Someone asked about the old Indian woman, and the reply was, "What woman?" We looked around, but she was nowhere to be found. We all went to bed a short time later, but I don't think too many kids slept well that night. I woke up several times during the night to the sounds of far-off drumming. Oh, scout camp memories. Frick. Man, that takes me back. Oh my gosh. I never ended up in a prank like this elaborate. There were some pranks that were had, but nothing quite this intense. Dude, that's awesome. That is so funny. Oh, and talk about commitment to character. I mean, my gosh. Frick. Still though, for those kids that got dragged off, that sounds like that would be like therapy material. Yeah, the best memory I have from scout camp is right after my sophomore year of high school. We went to a scout camp on Catalina Island, about like 26 miles or so off the coast of LA. Because, like I've said before, I grew up in California, and so it was only like a 6-hour drive from where we lived to get to LA. Anywho, so we get there, and my best friend was our like troop leader, because he'd been doing all like the Brown Sea troop patrol stuff and like doing all the big type leadership things for BSA. And apparently this was like a really official sort of scout camp, and so we needed to do this. We needed to have a troop leader and patrol leaders and all this other stuff. And so I was one of the patrol leaders, but the thing was, I was the only eagle in the troop, or at least of the kids that went anyway. And so that night, our scoutmaster kind of pulled everyone together at the campfire, and he was just like, all right, so here's the deal. Best friend is the troop leader. So he says something, you answer to him. I'm going to take the week off. I expect you to do merit badges and other stuff and make this worth your time to be here so that you can just hammer stuff out to get closer to your eagle. And my best friend's just sitting there with this whole power trip grin on his face. And I'm just like, whatever, I'm just here to goof. And then he turns around and he's like, now, while best friend is the troop leader, Exile is the only Eagle Scout here, which technically means he outranks best friend. So if he says something, all of you, including best friend, have to listen to him. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, this just got escalated. My best friend was just, the look on his face when he was like, wait, I can't completely power trip? Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, that was fun. And I got no crap about merit badges or anything else. I just basically snorkeled and boogie boarded for a whole week. And it was fantastic. Meanwhile, I'm watching everyone else have to go to their merit badge classes and time things out and see which ones they can and can't do. And I'm just like, man, it's nice being at the top. When I was 16, my next door neighbor wanted me to be a part of a prank on his friend from school who was always talking crap about being hardcore and knowing drug dealers, etc. This kid was about 14 or 15 at most. So we set it up that I would meet this kid with his friends on a rarely used dirt track in the park. Overgrown, out of the way, etc. This kid was the only one not in on it. I turned up wearing a backpack and hoodie. I was with one of his friends who had a BB gun stuffed in his belt line and was wearing a balaclava and army-type pants so he wouldn't be recognized. The kid turned up with his friends who had an envelope stuffed with money, paper. He looked wary the whole time, and I could tell he was further into any of this than he wanted to be. I did the meetup, handed over the backpack, and they handed me the envelope. Then we planned for another neighbor to walk down the same path dressed as a cop. Our cop friend starts yelling, "What's going on there? Hey, hey!" The kid legs it out of there faster than anyone could have expected. We fired off some party poppers for extra effect when he was out of sight with his friends. Had he been the hardcore kid he talked himself up to be, he'd probably have recognized the difference in sound. I didn't even want to be part of the prank when they put it to me. I was just hustled into it. Having said that, I'm glad I did it. It was hilarious, and apparently that kid settled down at school after that. Yeah, that's a way to do it. The only way that would have been better is if he peed himself on the way out. Freak. Kids. They can be so cruel and yet so brilliant. That was r/AskReddit, and if you want more funny or uplifting Ask Reddit content, then go ahead and check out the playlist link in the description below. Now you guys, stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside if you're supposed to. I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.